Hi friend, this is Wai Jia and you're listening to Dream Brave. My hope is that this space will strengthen your faith, gird you with courage, and encourage you to take the risks worth taking to propel you into the very best that God has for your life. One of the hardest things we can ever cope with in our lives is loss. Loss of a loved one, a relationship, our health, our job, or a dream we once held dear to our hearts. Yet, so much of our culture tells us that to lead a victorious life is to pick yourself back up and move on immediately. Where is room for grief? How can we appreciate the mountaintop if we've never trudged through the valleys? In this special season, I interview ordinary Christians who've encountered extraordinary obstacles to find light in the dark and strength in despair. For it's in our trials that God promises us the hidden treasures of darkness, riches stored in secret places, that we may know that He is God. My hope is that these stories of setback will inspire you to find hope in your struggles. Be blessed. Hi friends, today's episode is extra special because of a personal connection. My friend, who is Cliff's pastor's daughter in Canada, writer and speaker Anita recently married Timothy Muttoo. Their wedding story went viral, reaching over 100 million views worldwide because their love defied expectations. Anita, who is 5'3" and radiant, stood beside Tim, who is 4 feet tall and born with dwarfism. Together, they embody a love that sees beyond appearances and celebrates God's incredible story. And this is what Tim wrote to me specifically that made me go, yes, I definitely need to interview Tim. And that is, my journey growing up with dwarfism has been rooted in the belief that God created me with intentionality and purpose. What I may see as a limitation, He sees as an opportunity. When God knit my spirit to my body, it was no accident that He chose for me to be small. Tim's life has been an incredible proof of this. Raised in Canada by immigrant parents, he left behind a career at a multi-billion-dollar company after a pivotal mission trip to Uganda, co-founding his own organization called H2O for All, which now brings clean water to hundreds of thousands across Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Tim's story reminds me so much of Cliff, who survived liver cancer, because they both have surmounted incredible odds to be so secure and so proud of who God made them to be today. Tim's story is a powerful reminder that what the world may view as limitation is simply the vessel through which God displays His strength. For His treasures often shine brightest in the darkest places. Welcome, Tim, to the podcast. How are you feeling today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me.
Hello from Tanzania all the way to Toronto.
Exactly. So good. So good to be with you today.
Yeah. Tim, you just got married to Anita. How long ago was that?
So that happened June 21st. We celebrated our 2-month. Every month we're celebrating our anniversary. So we celebrated our 2-month anniversary
that is so
just
cute.
a few
And
weeks ago.
How are you feeling?
Great. We weren't expecting an explosion of our wedding pictures and story to go around the world. So that was not expected after our marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So that has taken some time to deal with and to be excited with. But we're feeling great, and we just have this anticipation and love for what God's going to be doing kind of with us as now that we're married. So we're very happy.
Oh. Wow, I'm so glad. Cliff and I, we were so excited when we saw both of you get together, and I can somewhat resonate. I mean, probably not on your level because, your story had like 100 million views, but Cliff and I, after we got married, our wedding video, I think it also went unexpectedly viral, and then we were spotted by strangers in like 3 different countries after that. So I can relate to some of what you're going through. And I'm just wondering if you would care to share how you and Anita met, because, it's such a beautiful love story. I would love to, for our listeners to hear it from you.
Yeah, so Anita and I met through some mutual friends. And these mutual friends are Jordan, which is a pastor, and Sonia, which are pastors. And Jordan was one of my best friends, one of my best friends, and I was his best man at his wedding. Wow. So we had a great relationship. And then Anita became a neighbor in where they lived, in their neighborhood. So during, in 2020, she moved into their neighborhood around that timing, just when the pandemic was starting. And
Right.
their son, Nathan, was coming on a missions trip to Uganda in East Africa with the
Mm-hmm.
charity that I co-founded.
Okay.
And they were doing a fundraiser, raising money for a farm that we were working on. So they were
Wow.
putting bananas on this tree outside in Canada. And
Uh-huh.
then Anita stuck out her head out of her home in their back door and said, "What's going on? What's this about?" And so
Yeah.
that is how this story started. Is Anita became friends with Sonia and their children and Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
And then through their church, I met Anita initially at Jordan's first one of his birthday parties.
Right.
And then eventually we became friends and built a friendship for a
Wow.
while. So, and through that
Wow.
friendship, we really believe that God was leading us down the path of marriage.
Right. Oh my goodness, Tim, I have so many questions for you. I have
Good,
goosebumps all
good.
over.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, you make it sound like it was so simple. You make it sound like so matter of fact. Yeah, we just met and then, we became friends and now
Yeah,
we got married. But I
yeah.
think
There's a lot more. Yes, of course.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's the beauty of your story. I can see how beautifully you carry humor and humility. And I'm sure it wasn't easy because I think maybe if you don't mind me asking the most obvious question, which is, could you
Right.
share with us what it was like growing up with dwarfism? Because clearly, I mean, the reason why your love story captured the minds and the hearts of so many people worldwide was because, you showed that both of you showed that love defies physical appearances, it defies expectations. But even then, I mean, it takes so much courage, to pursue a girl. I mean, Cliff can go on and on about this, but like, like, I am just blown away. Like, tell us more about your childhood. Tell us,
Yeah.
yeah, just tell us everything.
Yeah. And I'm excited to share, right? I'm excited to
Yeah.
share the life that God's given me and the life that I'm living.
Yeah. Yes.
Um, I grew up in just outside Toronto, which is in
Hmm.
Ontario, Canada, and
Right.
my parents immigrated to Canada, but
Right.
my brothers and I were born in Canada. So when I
Mm.
I was born with dwarfism. I'm the youngest child in my family, and
Right.
both my parents and both of my brothers do not have dwarfism. So,
Mm.
and it's a specific type of dwarfism called achondroplasia, and
Okay.
it's specific to just the genetics of how I was born. But one of the
Right.
things that I love to tell is when I grew up in the home, we grew up in a Christian home, grew up where we did devotions and read the Bible every day. Not
Right.
saying we're over spiritual, or it's just we grew up in an environment that my parents were on a journey of discovering their relationships with God, and
Wow.
which gave me a great example about looking to see if this was something that I wanted as well. Right. So growing up
Mm.
with dwarfism was something very special because my parents didn't treat me really any different. So I really commend them and
Wow.
love the fact that they didn't baby me, even though I was the baby of child of the family. They
Yeah.
really wanted me to try to do anything that I wanted to do. And if I wanted to play
Wow.
sports, or if I wanted
Mhm.
to drive a car, or if I wanted anything any teams that I wanted to do, they were always there being my encourager, being my cheerleader. And to me,
Wow.
that was something that really has stuck with me, that it's
Mm.
not about limitation as much as, well, you might be limited in one aspect, but there's
Right.
always another aspect that you can look at, right? So
Wow.
you might look at something and say, well, I can't do this,
Mhm.
but I can do something else, right? So,
Wow.
and I think that perspective, and I'm an engineer here in
Mhm.
Canada, I'm a licensed
Mhm.
engineer, and you always are looking for different ways to solve issues. So life is a journey about things that come and go, that we experience, that we
Mm.
have to deal with. So for me, when I look at my childhood, especially,
Right.
I'll go into a little bit more of maybe the things about how society saw me. But the way
Right.
I looked at it was, well, maybe I can't do something my other friends can do or my brothers can do,
Right.
but maybe I can do this, and maybe
Wow.
it's that aspect. And again, it's
Yeah.
kind of how you did your introduction is, I'll say this to many people, and they might not really get it, but I think
Right.
you first have to figure out a way to start loving yourself. And I don't think that's
Ooh.
something you can figure out just in one moment. It's something that
Yeah.
you have to do in a daily process. So
Wow.
when I was going through my childhood, I was like,
Mhm.
well, I love myself.
Mm.
I think I'm a wonderful, like I was discovering who I was, just as
Right.
anybody would during childhood and
Right.
adolescence and
Mhm.
young adulthood. But then you have society or people in your culture or society
Yeah.
saying, well, you look this way or you
Yeah.
are this tall,
So
then you need to
I
be defined in this way, right?
Right, right. That's so true. And Tim, I really love that you mentioned so much about your parents because I think
Yeah.
we underestimate, the power that parents have over our lives in that, I can see that so much of your confidence was because of the attitude that your parents gave to you, that they never saw you as, I remember you told me before that they never
Yeah.
wore gloves to handle you. Like you were just like, the other two boys. Now, tell us, did you ever get special privileges for not having to do chores like they did?
No, like that's a great thing is we divided up. My parents came from families that they did chores. Like they lived
Right.
in
Which
countries
countries
that
were they
they're
from?
my father's from Guyana, South America, and my mother's from Trinidad
Mm.
in the West Indies. So for
Right,
them to have this idea of chores, this was something part of their childhood, right?
right,
And then growing up for us, this was something like, okay, let's find things that Tim can do,
right,
and let's find things that my brothers can do. So we all had
right.
different jobs, we all had different responsibilities, and
I
again, we're
hear
building a
you.
home, right? So
Mhm.
when you're building a home, everybody wants to be part of that building. So my
Wow,
contribution might be a little different than my brother's,
wow.
but we're all part of that building. So
I
I think giving me the identity and knowing that I'm part of that family of building,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
still contributing, even though
I
I might
love that.
contribute differently, right? So
I love that
that
so
is
much.
something I'll really compliment that way of thinking of my
Yeah,
parents is,
yeah,
sometimes, and again, we're talking about me with dwarfism. You might
yeah.
have a child that's shy, right? Anita talks
Sure.
about her childhood of being shy, or you might have a child that has a learning disability or can't
Right.
read, or
Yeah.
they don't have fine motor skills. I don't know, the ability to maybe write properly,
Yeah.
right, with a pen.
Mhm. Or
So those things
dyslexia or
become
autism.
part, yes, those
Yeah,
things become part of defining a person, but then it's up
yeah.
to the environment that that person is in,
Ooh.
which are your
Yeah,
parents and your people that are
yeah.
around you, to say, well, yes, you might have a learning disability, or you might have
Wow.
dwarfism, or you might
Mm.
have, as you said, dyslexia, which I have
Right.
friends that have it.
Yeah. Mhm.
But let's look at not what you can't do, or let's look at what I would say mechanisms that help you deal with what you need to do to get on with life. And I think that's kind of what we are looking at from when I was growing up.
Yeah, I love what you just shared because, I have so many friends who are around my age who actually are raising
Okay.
kids now that they are
Yeah.
discovering to have like, ADHD or some form
Yeah.
of autism or some form
Right.
of like dyslexia. And, in Singapore, and I assume also where, Anita's heritage from, which I assume is from Hong Kong, in a lot of
That's correct.
Asian
Yeah.
countries, like,
Yeah.
studies and academia are just so important. And there's always a saying, or that's what people say back home, that it's so sad that the education system actually puts the spotlight on your weakness. If you're bad at math, even if you're good at other subjects, sometimes it's the system that penalizes you for being poor in math, and then it drags your so-called your total score down or something. But what you're saying is the opposite. And I love that because you're saying don't let what your weakness is hold you back, but instead look for mechanisms of possibility. And I think that is so, so powerful. The other thing that I found so powerful about what you shared is, your parents' contribution. And I think that's speaking to many of us, even right now, who are parents of young children or older children, in that sometimes I think it's easy to be depressed to look at our child, like Sarah Faith, my firstborn. She had severe
Okay.
eczema in her first
Oh,
like 2
wow.
years of life, and it was
Right.
just it came to a point where it was like untreatable. Like we used
Yeah.
everything, and it just nothing was working, and I'm just thinking to myself, how many other parents out there feel that they have disadvantaged their kids, whether it's through genetics or through the environment. But what you are saying is that your parents treated you with such a different attitude that your entire life, your heart, your mind was shifted. So I hope this speaks to parents out there that, the way that you parent your child can make such a drastic difference. Because look at Tim's life. Tim, you clearly have like no, I would say, I mean, everybody does have hang-ups, but I would say that clearly at this point in time, like you grew up with very few hang-ups. And I want to be real as well. Like, was that a part of your childhood or youth where you struggled with your identity or self-worth? Is there a particular incident or two which you felt was really scarring at the time and really took you intentionality to overcome?
Well, yeah, I would equate it to absolutely yes, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
part of my identity is who God's created me, right? So
Yeah.
getting to that point of acceptance and loving yourself and going
Yeah.
through that journey is a journey,
Mm.
and I'm still on that journey,
Oh.
right?
Mm.
So I think the reminder of me and my physicality as I was growing up was something that was always challenging, right? It's something that,
Mm.
well, I can't play basketball or I can't do this or I can't do that. And sometimes, when you talked about education, because I think education for me, and I do a lot of work around the world, and my
Mhm.
parents are immigrant parents. So they wanted education was very important, right? So
Yes.
education kind of puts everyone in the same box, right?
Mhm.
So if you're taking the same tests as everybody, you're reading the same textbooks, you're doing the same type of learning, and everyone's in that same box. And I think
Mhm.
society and culture needs to say, well, we don't all need to be in that same box. And I know it's
Wow.
easier in an education system. What we need to do is say, let's look at everyone as an individual in their uniqueness and what
Mhm.
they have to give, and then with that approach, then you'll have better ability to have people kind of understand what their value is, right? So
Mhm.
if you kind of look at people in society and say, well, these are the things that you can contribute, just like my home. My parents
Right.
didn't have me doing chores that were
Right.
things I couldn't do, right? They had me
Mhm.
doing things that I can still contribute to my home with things that I can do. And that's the same
Okay.
thing I'd say about society. So going back to this question, were there specific things that bothered me or I can remember? I would
Yeah.
say sometimes, like I think the greatest thing, and we'll unpack this love story with Anita. The greatest thing that I tell people is get to know me, right? If you
Yeah.
don't want to get to
Wow.
know me, then how can you
Yeah.
judge me? And if you judge me, then I'm like, well, you're looking at me from your lens without getting to know me. So without
Wow.
getting to know somebody, and I'll challenge everybody, it might be somebody like myself who has dwarfism, right? Or it might be somebody that has another evident issue, could be internal or external. But when you
Mhm.
don't get to know them, then
Right.
you become something that is more judgmental. So growing up,
Oh.
going back to your question, is people
Mhm.
that didn't get to know me either would make fun of me sometimes or they would assume, well, Tim's not going to try because he doesn't, they're going to assume that I'm not willing to try sometimes. And I'm like, well,
Right.
you haven't even asked me, right? So,
Wow.
sometimes as an adolescent, you're like, well, why didn't you give me the opportunity, right? Why didn't you
Right.
give me the
Right.
opportunity to fail? So
Wow.
part of my upbringing and part of my life was saying, well, we all need to know where failure happens and we need to fail. We need to come to the point that, yeah, when I try to shoot a basketball in a hoop, I have to figure that out, how I am going to do it. But if you look at me
Wow.
and say, well, Tim, in the world, most basketball players are 6'7", 6'8", or whatever that may be, you're 4 feet tall, you can't
Mm.
do it, then that perspective is very different. You're not giving me the opportunity of figuring out how I can do it. So my challenge growing up was
Right.
something that I said I really got bothered when people are like, they make more comments about me without getting to know me, and then
Yeah.
without the ability of giving me the opportunity to figure it out, right? Just
Wow.
let me figure it out. Let me figure it
Yeah.
out how to turn a light switch on. So one of the things my dad did is
A light
I couldn't
switch.
reach light switches when I was a when I was a child, right?
Ah, okay.
And then my dad invented something, not inven well, he created something for me to turn lights on and off. So he didn't say,
Wow.
"Well, Tim can't go and deal with the house."
Right.
So there's always this opportunity, based on your perspective
Mm-hmm.
of that. So there were
I
specific things.
mm-hmm.
Like I took piano. I took piano
Oh,
for many years. And one of the
okay.
things that my piano teacher taught me, for you that know piano, is
Mm-hmm.
there's all sorts of ways to do play chords and play progressions and all of that.
Yeah.
But I
Mm-hmm.
had to learn them a little differently because my hand span is a little different than somebody
Right.
else. So my
Sure.
teacher said, Tim, you can still play piano,
Mm-hmm.
but you're going to have to learn a little bit of a different when you do different chords and that. So
Wow.
that person, even my piano teacher, said, no, it's not that we're saying you can't do it, but we're going to
Right.
figure out a way how you can do it. And I
Wow,
think
Tim,
that is part of something that's very special.
I just love this, Tim. You are like constantly surrounded by people who are creative and who are just all for you.
Yeah.
They think of possibilities, and I think that's how your childhood was shaped. Like you are just so filled with possibility, and now I'm not surprised at all that you started a charity called H2O for All, solving like
Yeah,
the world's like hardest problem, which is like how to get clean water to like the hardest places, right? Because you are constantly thinking, and I think this is the power of possibility that these people
that's
believed in
correct.
you, and therefore you believed in yourself. I also want to give our audience
That
some
is correct.
context because you mentioned that I love this very powerful phrase that you said, which was get to know me. I think that takes so much audacity and almost a bit of schutzpah to say like, hey, get to know me. Because recently, I have been trolled online. As our social
Oh,
media
okay.
following grows, that becomes like an inevitable thing. People started saying things like, that because of Cliff's condition, that I was kind of
Mm,
endangering him by living in Africa and things like that, and kind of not taking into consideration that he is a man with a mind of his own, that he's an adult, just
yeah,
like you, right? They assume that
that's
just because you
correct.
have a chronic condition that you don't have a mind of your own.
That's
And
correct. Yeah.
I love what you said when you said get to know me, because a friend challenged me and said, Waija, why don't you like a good way to deal with critics is just to have this mindset to say, you don't know me. You have not known me. And I remember watching yours and Anita's Instagram, and I
Okay.
remember being very angry for both of you when you showed maybe
Right.
Anita showed some of the criticisms that people were posting. You clearly had such a wow love story. It was like 100 million views. Clearly it had touched the lives and hearts of so many people around the world. And yet there were these online warriors saying things like, oh, Anita is a gold digger. Clearly,
Yeah.
Tim must be very rich for her to want to marry a man like that. And I'm like, these
Right.
people are crazy. And the first thing I thought of was, wait till they get to know both of you. And sure enough, I'm so happy to hear you say this, that, I almost want to say it's like a tagline, get to know me.
It honestly, and it's something that challenges me, and I'm
Mhm.
challenging the people that are listening and watching, is that when
Yeah.
our society doesn't necessarily teach us to get to know somebody. Like we say hi to somebody, goodbye to
Right.
somebody, but do we really want to take that extra
Mm.
step to say, hey, how you doing? Are we looking for someone to
Wow.
say, well, I'm not having a good day? Or are you willing to
Right.
say, can we go out for a coffee or something? So, you know,
Mm.
that get to know me thing has been part of my whole life. Is once you
Right.
get to know me,
Yeah.
once you get to go beyond what the society or culture might think, then
Yeah.
you understand, right? You understand the dynamics and the beauty of who I am, and the beauty
Yeah.
of how God created me. So
Yes.
I think those are things that we need to continue to teach and to continue
Mm-hmm.
to lead, right? One thing is to say it, but it's something that I want to be known for getting to know people, right? Not only them
Wow.
getting to know me. When I go into villages across the world, I sit down with people, especially women,
Yeah.
right? So women in these villages are probably the lowest on the societal totem pole or the societal
Right.
structure, right?
I hear you.
But those are the people that I like sitting down with because people aren't talking to them, right?
Wow.
So I think
Like
we
Jesus
need to
did.
make decisions around those aspects to say, even if you have a child, so let's just use an example of a child, going back to
Right.
childhood and parents. If my
Okay.
parents would take me everywhere, my parents would want me to meet people. My parents would
Mm.
want me to talk to people. My parents would want me to not be stuck in a room because they wanted me to be able to build friendships and
Right.
relationships and those
Mm-hmm.
things. So it's important that we don't put too many safeguards around the things that we might want to be overprotective, and we let
Mm.
people figure it out. And that's one thing I would say is we need to let
Wow.
people figure it out. Just like your husband, right? You're
Ooh.
going to
Yeah.
figure it out. When I started to
Wow.
travel around the world, and again, why
Yeah.
start a charity to help people with water, right? Why do
Yeah.
that? Because that the world needs to like do that for somebody. But I had to figure out
Wow.
most of my approach with that. So my
Right.
encouragement to people is encourage people in who they are becoming or who they are, right? We're
Yeah.
always developing, and
Yeah.
encourage them. Maybe they're shy, maybe they don't have a lot of self-esteem, right? Maybe they're like,
Right.
look at me, they make fun of me, or look at
Yeah.
me, I don't have blue eyes, blonde hair, or I don't look
Mm-hmm.
like the people in the movies or that.
Right.
But encourage them to say, well, let's be thankful for what you are and who you're becoming, right? And I
Yeah.
think I do a lot of mentoring of children, young people, and young
Mm-hmm.
adults. And I think the
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing with them is to let them begin to figure themselves out and not let
Wow.
society define who they are. And when
Yeah.
you give
I love
people
this
that
tagline.
opportunity, that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that tagline. It's like, I mean, one thing that you taught us today was, get to know me. It's kind of that audacity that you have to be confident enough to say that. The second thing was, let
Yeah.
let people figure it out. Even let yourself figure it out. But Tim, there's one thing I remembered in the previous
Okay.
conversation we had, which I really
Yeah.
want you to tell us a little bit more about. Is we recognize that while externally you're considered different, there's a very
Yeah.
strong kind of visual cue, but when
Yes.
it comes to many of us who are walking around, so many of us are walking deficits. We are walking around with traumas of the past, with parents who have emotionally neglected us or might have abused us. And I remember you sharing with me before, saying that actually everybody is walking around with some sort of a deficit. It's just that yours can be seen externally and it is height.
That's
However,
correct. Yeah.
all of us are walking around with some sort of hurt, some sort of pain. And what would your words or your thoughts be around that? Like, how can we see ourselves differently? Because you mentioned something so important and it's just so simple. It's love yourself. But I'm wondering, for people who have been hurt, for people who have grown up in families with, chronic abuse, chronic neglect, how do you even begin to think differently? Because for yourself, you had the privilege of, while suffering from, well, I wouldn't even say suffer, while having the condition dwarfism, your parents gave you such a strong, robust start to your childhood. What would you say to people who did not have that?
Yeah.
And on the surface, look perfectly fine. They may be beautiful. They might be prom king and queen before, but just feeling
Yeah.
so empty.
Like my encouragement to them is not, you know, there's a lot of people with a lot of different things that they carry, right? And you
Yeah.
mentioned a few of them, and
Mm.
it's figuring out how to deal with those things that you carry, right?
Mm.
And I'm never going to negate and say, well, just ignore them or don't accept them. When something happens to somebody, I say, figure out a way to work through it. And it might take a
Wow.
lifetime, it might take a week, it might take a day, but you have to figure out a way how to face it. And I think the challenge is sometimes we compartmentalize these things that we carry, and we don't realize how they affect our, what I would call our day to day, right? So my
Wow.
encouragement is find a way to start to deal with it. And sometimes it's like grief, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't necessarily define grief, and you can't put time around grief, but at least you can say, I am going to look at how that's affecting me. Say it's
Right.
some type of abuse that's happened in your childhood or in your
Mm-hmm.
life, and you
Mm-hmm.
need to deal with it. I would say seek out professional help in a sense. Like look
Yeah.
for the right people that can help you in that journey, right? So
Right.
I would never say just put it on a shelf and never deal with it, because it bubbles
Mm-hmm.
up.
Right.
Bubbles up when you get to meet somebody, or you get married, or you're starting to figure out in a workplace, right? So some people I know have issues to deal with, temper, right?
Mm-hmm.
They have short fuses. Those are people can't control their emotions,
Right.
and they're like, well, yeah, I'm not going to deal with that now. But then they end up in a job that they're under pressure and they can't deal with it, right? Or they're in a
Right.
relationship that they find out that life has put a lot of pressure on them and they can't,
Right.
right? So my encouragement to people is we are all on a journey. Doesn't matter who you are. And I
Mm.
was saying this, the most beautiful people in the world are also the most insecure people, because they're
Mm.
constant being looked upon about how their nose looks, how their eyes look, how their hair
Right.
looks, right? So they have a lot of insecurities, and I think everybody has something they have to deal with.
Right.
I have to deal with things every day, right? I have to choose, well, Tim, I need to work on those things that are becoming an issue with you. So one of the things I can say with
Yeah.
Anita, who's my beautiful recent wife,
Wife.
is sometimes we joke around and say, Anita, weren't you praying harder? Why didn't we meet earlier? And this is a kind of a running joke
Oh.
we have. But then we
Right.
both have come to the conclusion is God needed to work on our lives. I needed to work on my
Sure.
life. I
Sure.
needed to be ready till that moment that I did meet Anita at that party, right?
Mhm.
So that when
Yeah.
I was there at that moment, I dealt with some of the things in my life, right?
Yeah.
If I
Yeah.
didn't deal with some of those things in my life, I would have really no confidence to say, here's a beautiful person that God's brought in my life.
Yes.
And I am just like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. Not saying I didn't do
Yes.
that, but I think the journey is, let's try to identify some of those things.
Mhm.
They're not easy, especially abuse or some things that are
Yeah.
full of hurt,
Yeah.
but try to identify them and find the people that can help you work through them, right? And that's my
I
advice.
I love what you said about find the right people, because I noticed that in your story, repeatedly you talk about several positive people in your life. And I remember reading that you and Anita had actually reached out to, is it Nick Vujicic and his wife? So Nick Vujicic, as some of our listeners might know, is a very famous, well-known, inspirational speaker who loves the Lord as well. And he was born with a genetic condition that doesn't allow him to have hands or feet. But now he has been married, he has kids, he has a very fulfilling life as a motivational speaker. So, Tim, how did you get in touch with Nick and his family, and how was that connection encouraging for you and Anita?
Yeah, so let me just back up. I think where
Sure.
the connection was Anita
Yeah.
really read the book. So let's and she really connected to Nick and his wife and the story and
Oh,
who they are. So we never
right.
physically talked to them, but let me just
Ah,
tell you a little bit of the story of my
sure.
relationship with Anita, so people don't think it's just Cinderella and everything was golden, right? I think one of the things that when Anita and I were becoming friends
Mm-hmm.
and unpacking this idea that we could be more than friends, right? So first you
Right.
start with friends, and then is there something more romantically, and not only romantically, is it something that we want to see long term, right?
Right.
one of the things that Anita wrestled with was what I look like. Like in a lot of life, it's figuring out, can this person be my spouse or be my best friend or be that person that I would want in my life. So one of
Yeah.
the things I do, and I'm not saying I probably have learned this since in my life, is you let people take time. You don't rush
Mm,
people, and I probably made mistakes where I have rushed people in the past. But at this
mm.
point in my life, I was like, I just want Anita to get to know me as a friend. So in our
Wow.
culture in Canada, and I don't know about other parts of the world, when you meet a beautiful person at a party, the first thing
Yeah.
you do is, well, let's go on a date, right? And then you go
Uh-huh.
on the first date, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, let's go on the second date. Then all of
Mhm.
a sudden you're like, well, let's go on the third date. And then you're pushing things along a bit too quickly in my mind. With Anita and I, we never went on a date till after we were dating. So my approach was, let's let this process of friendship let each other figure out what the issues are and what we need to deal with. So I
Wow.
also had things I need to deal with, right? With
Yeah.
Anita. But her thing is she needs to figure out and pray and work through those things, not only with me, but with herself. It's to
Yeah.
say, is this the person she wants to not only be friends with, date, but also end up marrying? And I
Wow.
think this idea of what Nick did and his book did is give her the encouragement, give her the ability to process what those things that she was dealing with, right?
Wow.
Maybe insecurity or what society would say, not only in front with doors open, but what about
Yeah.
how it works with when the doors are closed between a husband and wife, right? How's that going to work
Right.
with a gentleman like Tim, right?
Right.
So I think, that idea that of her journey is figuring out that for herself. The last thing you
Wow.
want to do, again, in a romantic relationship, is force somebody to say, yeah, do you like me? I think so. And then next week, yeah, do you like me? Kind of.
Okay.
And then the next week, do you like me? And then she says, yeah. And then it's kind of like being pushed along in a
Yeah.
relationship. And I think sometimes we
Mm.
push things along where people aren't even figuring it out. And then they get in the
Sure.
relationship and they're like, well, I didn't even have time to figure this out. So with
Wow.
me, I was like, let's just take our time.
Yeah.
And I've really felt calm. So in the story, in our love story, while this process was going on,
Mhm.
my dad is not alive anymore. So he passed away. And I went to his gravesite, not saying that I was looking to hear from him, but
Right,
I
right.
like to go to this cemetery because if you ever want to hear and find peace and hear from God, you go to the most solemn place. So I went to this
Right.
place
Mhm.
and it was a quiet place and I was the only person in this massive cemetery and I sat on this bench and I was like, God, what am I doing? What am I doing? You brought this beautiful person into my life. What am I
Right.
doing? Right? So
And and Anita really is beautiful. She is stunning.
yeah, she's stunning, right? So it
Yeah,
was
she really is.
taking that time for me to also figure out what I was doing. Because on one
Sure.
side, society says men, and again, this is the conversation that's gone viral, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, this is a conversation about money. Tim has money, he can buy Anita. Tim has influence, he can just buy this woman. And this is the way society
Mm.
works. It's not about
Wow.
love, it's about buying. It's about
Wow.
possession, right?
Mm.
So what's our story here with letting Anita figure it out with this whole thing about Nick is when you let
Right.
people figure things out. Again, getting to know me, figure
Yeah.
it out. Is Tim this person that society is making him think he is, like making him think that you think he is, right?
Right.
Or is he somebody that's really fun and cool and you want to be around and you don't even think of anything when you're around that. So
Right.
why I say what the book Nick did and what Nick Vujicic did and his wife, it gave time for Anita to figure it out. It gave time for
Right.
Anita to get to know me and get to take her time to do that. And that's my encouragement is and Anita did that. I didn't do that.
Yeah.
So Anita said, I need to find a way to figure this out.
I love how patient you are. I think Cliff did the same for me as well when, he had a liver
Yeah.
crisis and, now he confesses he was so scared. Like when I went offline, I didn't contact him for a few days. He was so
Yeah.
scared that was the end. And previously he had a previous rejection before. He was dating a girl and they really liked each other. And then the girl's parents found out that he had this condition and then it was silence and then she decided to break it off. So it was very heartbreaking for him to be in that situation again. I guess my question is what gave you the confidence to even pursue Anita? Because, pursuing is a very intentional and also very all-consuming kind of process, right? Like, did you ever feel like, there's so many other taller, more handsome, candidates out there, smarter men, why would she pick me? Did you ever have these kinds of like thoughts? Because it's so funny.
I'm laughing because, of course,
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
human. We're human, right? So
yeah.
for me
So how
to
did you
say
overcome
this or
that?
anyone to
It's
say
huge.
differently, I would say
Yeah.
that's not true. We are
Mm,
human and we all look at ourselves and we all think we're, this idea of imposter syndrome or who am I
yeah.
to be in this moment, right? Who am I
Yeah.
to be in this place that I'm becoming friends with not only externally beautiful Anita, but also
Right.
internally incredible person, right? So
Yeah.
yes, I sat there many times. Even now, I'm like, I'm pinching myself. Is this real, right? So
Yeah.
yes, it's looking at yourself, and again, in society, and the idea of love is, and this is why I believe it's gone around the world. You don't have to be rich, you don't have to be poor. Like there's so many things about the idea of love and the journey of love that supersedes everything. It supersedes
Wow.
politics, supersedes your
Mm,
social economic background,
mm,
supersedes education. The
mm.
idea of falling in love is what's gone on with hundreds of millions. Now we're in, over a couple 100 million now. But this
Wow.
idea of this conversation has translated around the world. So for me, your question is, did I feel those things? Absolutely, 100%. I think
Mm,
what kind of took me through the journey was that we became so vulnerable. So falling in love or getting to the point that you are giving all of your emotion and all your vulnerabilities. There's no more secrets. There's no more hidden corners. There's no
mm,
more habits. And this is the thing. There's no more, hiding phones. There's no, like, I just saying things that are trending, right? These
mm.
persons hide, like, there's no more secret email. Like, it's everything that's on the table. It's the most vulnerable thing you can do is to put everything on the table and out
Wow.
there. And then you're
I
sitting
love that.
there and you're saying, is this person going to accept all of those things that I'm putting out there? And again,
Wow.
sometimes in our society, we're so afraid that we hide things and then
Mm-hmm.
they show up in life later or they show up in the relationship later. I think where
Wow.
I was in this and with Anita, I just wanted to put everything out, including my
Yeah.
physicality, including my vulnerabilities, including
Yeah.
my things that exactly what you said, right?
Yeah.
Put it out there and then get to let Anita and I get to know each other on a level that was very deep and
Wow. I
work
love
through
that,
that
Tim.
and do that. And that
I
I
love
think
that.
is a challenge around the world that we saw both going viral is most people
Mm,
are like, and this is the biggest comment. One of the biggest
yeah.
comment, they're like, Tim, tell me how you did it. Tim, tell me what you did.
People
Tim,
want a
when's your book
formula.
coming out? Right?
Yeah. People want a
And
formula. They want to know what
they want
you.
the formula, but my
Yeah.
encouragement to people is once you accept yourself, and again,
Yeah.
acceptance is a daily thing.
Mm-hmm.
Once you love yourself and love is a daily thing, is then you can then be the most vulnerable. And when you're the
Mm,
most vulnerable to the somebody that you want to fall in love with, you're going to
mm-hmm.
have a deep connection that no one could ever challenge. But
Wow.
when you're
Oh,
not
Tim. That's so
vulnerable
good.
and
Mm,
you're not willing to let go of or hide things,
yeah.
then that relationship as you build it will only be built around certain aspects. So
Wow.
that's my advice is, yeah, did I feel insecure? 100%. When I met Anita's parents, right, who are
Oh
Chinese
my
Chinese
goodness. I
parents
know
from
them.
Hong
I
Kong,
actually know them.
you know them, right?
I
I had to
actually
go
know
sit in
them.
front
Yeah.
of and I did things very formal. So I know even when before I dated Anita, I said, Anita, I want to meet your parents. I don't want them to hear about
Wow.
me. I want them to
Yeah.
know who I am. So before we
Wow.
even started dating, I got to meet them. When we
Wow.
started dating, I talked to them about what my intentions were, right?
Wow.
And then before I proposed to Anita, I sat down with her parents and said,
Wow.
this is my intention, and we talked, and those were important things, right?
Wow.
Um,
Tim,
so
you're such a brave
am I
man. You are so,
vulnerable?
so
Sorry?
brave. You are so, so, so brave. Like you are just, yeah, I
Well,
mean,
I think
you're
this is part of why
courageous.
Anita has fallen in love with me, is
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
I've dealt with things, and you can say this about your husband, is the people that have
Yeah.
dealt with more challenges in life, those
Yes,
are the people you wanna be around. So when I go
I
around the
agree.
world and I sit
Yeah.
down with people that they don't know if their kids are gonna be educated, they don't know where they're getting their food from, they don't know where they're
Yeah.
getting their water from, they're in
Mm.
political unstable, villages and countries. Those are the people that have lived life, and I learned so much for those type of people. So for a
Wow.
person like me that's lived life, what I would say had more challenges, had to do
Right.
things harder, had to work, everything that has happened in my life I've worked hard for, then
Yeah.
people are like, this person has deeper meaning and deeper character and has deeper roots, right?
Yes.
And I think those are the benefits of when you meet people that have dealt with life a bit harder and a bit
Yeah.
more challenging and
Wow.
not as nice, that you're like, wow. And this is what happens when people get to know me. They're like, wow,
Yeah.
now I kind of know that what society might say is
Exactly.
not what I accept. And
It's
I
so
think this is
true.
my journey, right? So that's my thing
Yeah. Thank you for
of,
sharing
yeah.
that with me, Tim, because I remember like a few weeks ago when we first spoke to each
Yeah.
other, I
Yeah.
remember like within the first few minutes, you were just talking about, how everybody has different kinds of deficits. Some are seen, some are under. You had me in tears in minutes already.
Oh, sorry.
And
Yeah. Sorry.
I said, I said, Tim reminds me so much of you. I said, he has so much incredible strength and just this. I told him, I said, you just have this incredible resilience, just like the way Cliff sees himself. Like he never saw his
Mm.
childhood as being less than. He always told me that, he had his 11th birthday in the hospital post liver transplant, and it was the
Mm.
best birthday he had. He always talks about all
Wow.
the highlights of that day, his video gaming and the cake and the jelly and all those memories that he had. So I think that's the similarity I see between both of you, that you're both so willing to be so real, not hiding the difficulties that you meet, but also being so, so tremendously vulnerable, not only with yourself, but with people around you. So thank you for being such an inspiration. Tim, I want to ask this question, even as we close, but I'm just really curious. At any one point in your life, did you ever ask God to like make you tall or like to heal you? Because I know you have such a strong message of acceptance, of self-love, self-acceptance. But was there any point in time you told the Lord, like, Lord, you can do anything. Can you like make me tall? Or something like that, can you heal
Oh, no,
me?
100%. Like when I was growing up, I was always praying
Yeah.
for the miracle would be that I would wake up in my bed and be tall, right? Or that
Wow.
miracle, they would find the cure might not be the right word, but find a way
Right.
for my body to start growing, right?
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, of course, right? Those are natural things. And
Yeah.
as I went through life, I was just wanting to accept kind of I wouldn't say the cards, right? But accept what
Right.
I believe, as you quoted me, you know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, God, we have to believe that there's something greater than us in this world, right? there's
Right.
something bigger than us, and I know people might not have the same beliefs as
Right.
me, but I would
Mm-hmm.
encourage them to say, well, I have a moment to live my life, and my life, whatever challenges I might have, I'm going to figure them out and figure out how to deal with them, because this is the life I've been given. And
Wow.
the life I've been given is, I want to live a great life, right? So
Wow.
sometimes we have to look at our aspects and say, yeah, and I said this as, there's so many people, or I would say every single person on the planet has some type of
Right.
deficit, has some type
Yeah.
of thing that might not equate to the person beside them or
Wow.
their friends. But it's
Right.
that perspective of saying, should I just pray to God to change me, or accept that God has given me this gift
Wow.
for a reason and a purpose, right? And
Right.
it's like getting to the part of life and saying, well, all of the things that are behind me are the things that make me who I am. So
Right.
I
Wow.
say this to Anita, and I say this to people, who is, don't look at your past as terrible, even though there might be terrible things that have happened. I will never say
Mm.
don't go through and figure those things out, and
Right.
don't label something that's
Right.
terrible not terrible. But
Right.
it's also looking at saying, well, those things that you went through
Yeah.
are only going to make you better for the journey
Wow.
ahead, right? And
Wow.
that's how I look at my life, is saying, all of the things, that challenges that I have and had, give me the perspective of what I want to do. So I
Wow.
remember when I started public speaking, like standing in front of thousands of people. Some people have
Yeah.
a hard time standing in front of a couple people because of
Yeah.
insecurity. I
Yeah.
stand on stages in front of thousands of people, or I stand in front of people, and you could get caught up in saying, well, they're looking at me, they're in their mind, they're just laughing at me. But it's also
Right.
saying, you know what? I have an opportunity that I've been given to stand in front of these people and do this. So
Wow.
my
I love that.
encouragement is,
Yeah.
yes. Did I pray? Anita and I wish Anita was on here too, but Anita and
Yeah.
I have this joke as well. I said,
Yeah.
Anita, would you have married me and dated me if I was 6 feet tall? And she said, absolutely not. And I said, why, Anita? She says, because your heart would be different, your generosity
Wow.
would be different, your character would
Wow.
be different, your whole
Wow.
life of who you are would not be the
Mhm.
person that I've fallen in love with. She didn't fall in
Wow.
love with my body. She fell in love with who I was. And it, it's all, it's almost going to get me
Wow.
teared up, but that's the truth
Wow.
yeah. I said to Anita when we were going through our journey, what if I just
Wow.
was blonde hair, blue eyes?
Mm.
Would you have dated me? She's like, no,
Mhm.
I
Wow.
only have fallen in love with you because of you. And I think
Wow.
that's what people need to take away,
Yeah.
is it's you.
Wow.
Think about
Wow.
yourself and go through that journey,
Yes.
that of discovering yourself, discovering
Yeah.
those things that are
Absolutely.
inside of you that can make your journey even better, right?
Wow.
And
Thank you
same
so
thing, it's
much,
like
Tim.
playing the piano, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
people are like, how can that guy with his small hands play the piano? But it's
Yeah.
not that. It's like, yes, I can play the piano because I can
Yeah.
figure out a way to do that in a way. So that's
Wow.
my encouragement to everybody,
Thank you so
is
much, Tim.
yeah, is to do that.
I love that. I love that. I resonate so much to what you just shared. And I think it's just such a beautiful way to close our conversation, because I love what Anita said, that if you had gone through a different life path, that she wouldn't have
Yeah.
fallen in love with you. And it's really funny,
Yeah.
because the one thing that people told me not to marry Cliff for was his transplant and all the complications that would come with it. And it's so funny. I think when I go back to Canada, I really have to sit down and give Anita a good hug and have a coffee or something, because
She'd love
I
it.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, because I tell people, I said it's really because he has been through the cancer and the transplant and the Iron Man that makes me fall in love with him. So, the complications that come with it are, it's part of the package. And it's also
That's correct.
why I fell in love with him. It's just his tenacity, the perseverance, the resilience, right? And so
That's correct. Yeah.
truly, I feel so encouraged, so inspired, and so honored to witness, the love story between both of you. Thank you for just being such a witness to the world, and thank you for just being such a testimony of what God can do, even through what the world sees as deficit. So thank you so much, Tim, for coming on to the podcast. I'm so grateful.
Thank you for having me. It's been a wonderful time. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Tim. Thank you for watching. My hope is that every message on Kitedreams will inspire you to dream bravely and live boldly for God. If you've been blessed by these messages, feel free to share them with your friends, subscribe, and I'd love to hear from you. May God grant you the courage and faith to pursue all that He has in store for you. Be blessed.